Welcome back to the Anfield Exchange, and Liverpool have got themselves a striker conundrum. So there's a lot of talk at the minute of Darwin Nunez leaving the club. If that happens, Liverpool won't have an out-and-out striker. So there's a lot of talk as well in the transfer market about who will Liverpool be bringing in. I think what we can say is one thing for sure, Liverpool will bring in a top-class striker. Now, the two names on the list, Ekitike and Isak, I think Newcastle have recently expressed an interest in Ekitike. I think if that deal happens, then it frees up Isak to leave the club. I don't think we're bringing Ekitike in to play as a backup to Isak. It just wouldn't make sense financially. Ekitike wouldn't want to come to the Premier League to be a backup either. So I think Liverpool will bring in one of those two strikers. Now, what I want to talk about today is who is Liverpool's backup striker. So Darwin Nunez is currently at the club. There's talks about him potentially leaving. I've seen a little bit of a sort of switcheroo on social media recently, certainly after the game yesterday, but a lot of people are now saying they want Darwin Nunez to stay. To be honest, I'm in that camp. I think I would be happy for Darwin Nunez to stay at the club. I just want to run through some of his statistics because, look, on the eye, Darwin Nunez hasn't been all that for Liverpool, and you could consider him a flop. But in terms of statistics, he's made 136 appearances, he's scored 38 goals, and he's got 20 assists. So that's a goal or an assist every 2.5 games, just under 2.5 games. Now, I don't think that's too bad, considering Darwin Nunez, in the duration of him playing for Liverpool, I don't think he's ever established himself as that first team starter. He certainly never did it last season. So a lot of those appearances are from coming off the substitutes bench as well. So a goal or an assist every 2.5 games, I don't think it's too bad, to be honest. But we have been linked with some players this morning. Christopher Nkunku is one of them on the list, and Mateta from Crystal Palace is the other one that I've seen us linked to. I'm firmly in the camp that I would like Darwin Nunez to stay. I'm going to put that out there. But if Darwin Nunez leaves the club, I've seen a lot of sort of criticism for Liverpool being linked or attached to this Christopher Nkunku deal. I don't actually think that's too bad of a deal. So, yes, it hasn't worked out at Chelsea for him, and he would only be coming in if Darwin Nunez was to leave the club. Let's make that clear. So he would be coming in as a backup option. That's my belief anyway. I think he's in a similar situation to Darwin Nunez. So Christopher Nkunku, he came with a high reputation. He played for RB Leipzig. He's come into the Premier League and it's just not worked for him at Chelsea. There's a few reasons as to why it hasn't worked. I think injuries is obviously one of those reasons. But I also think he hasn't been given the game time. You saw him last season. He was playing Europa League football and then being dropped for the Premier League. He was making a substitute appearance here and there. So I don't think he's really got into that rhythm of starting games. Now, when Christopher Nkunku was at Leipzig, he was an up-and-coming talent. He was considered one of the up-and-coming players in Europe. And I just want to read off Nkunku's stats. So he's played 182 times for RB Leipzig. He scored 70 goals and he got 41 assists. That's within 4 seasons. So that's a goal or an assist every other game. So in terms of his numbers from Leipzig, Nkunku stacks up and he comes in better than Darwin Nunez does. So I wouldn't be too disappointed if Liverpool were to bring Nkunku in as the backup option. I actually do think that there is a good player in there. I think he's like I said, he's in the same situation as Nunez. It just hasn't worked at Liverpool. And I think Nkunku obviously hasn't worked at Chelsea, but I think a new lease of life, a move to another club, I think it could sort of bring out the best in Christopher Nkunku. But again, it's a big risk that how much will Chelsea want for this player? I don't know what his contract is, but I assume it will probably be tied up till 2050. They would probably demand quite a high fee, but if you could bring Nkunku in for, say, 25 million, I wouldn't be opposed to that. What you've got to remember is Liverpool, before he moved to Chelsea, were interested in Nkunku as well. And Liverpool were looking to tie up a deal for Nkunku with a belief that he could be the new Robert Firmino. Obviously, that didn't go through. But once Liverpool, we've seen it time and time again, once Liverpool were interested in a player, that player, we stay interested. We don't just forget about those players because they haven't turned up to the club. We've seen that time and time again. So this is definitely an interesting one. Why hasn't it worked at Chelsea? Like I said, game time has been one of the reasons, and injuries as well. But I think you've got to take into consideration as well, since he has played for Chelsea, since he made the move to Chelsea, Chelsea have not been a good team. Chelsea, okay, we got Champions League football last season, but the 2 years before that, under Pochettino, I think, did they finish bottom half in season 1, and then we got into the top 8, I think, in season 2. So he hasn't had a great team around him. So we all know how hard it is for players to perform to their best abilities when you've not got the players around you. We've seen it at Man United now. Look, Bruno Fernandes is a good player. I believe they have other good players in terms of Højlund. I actually think Højlund's a good player. He just isn't getting the service. And I think that's what Nkunku's found in his first couple of seasons at Chelsea. And I think I believe that's a big reason for why it hasn't worked for him at Chelsea. I think if you're going to surround him with the likes of Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, Florian Wirtz, McAllister, Szoboszlai, I think you surround him with them players, I think it could be a completely different story for Christopher Nkunku. So, yeah, for me, it's worth a punt. I wouldn't like to go above 25 just because he hasn't done it in the Premier League and he's not really getting the game time, and we've seen he's got a little bit of an injury record. But, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I am in the camp of Darwin Nunez staying. I also wouldn't be opposed to Nkunku. I think if Darwin Nunez stays, what you've got to look at is the players that we've brought in this season. So, again, a little bit of a sort of breakdown. So, if you go back to last season with Darwin Nunez in the squad, and when he did make appearances on, most of the creativity towards Darwin Nunez came from Trent at the back. That's a long ball over the top, Darwin Nunez trying to run in behind and get onto it. Now, those aren't the easiest chances. First, you've got to bring the ball down, and then you've got to try and get it under control and put it in the back of the net. So that's one aspect of why Nunez's numbers probably aren't as high as what they are. Also, there's an element of the composure. We know Darwin Nunez hasn't really... He's had his moments, but he hasn't been consistent enough with it. I'm not going to pretend that Salah and Gakpo haven't put things on a plate for him, and Szoboszlai as well, because they have... And Darwin Nunez hasn't made the most of them chances. What works for me is the reason I'm sort of not sold on selling Darwin Nunez is I actually think the way football's going, most of these teams now, we saw it with Southampton when they came into the Premier League last year. Most of these teams are trying to play the Pep Guardiola way. They're trying to play with that high line, and they're trying to play with a high press, which leaves space in behind defenders. Now, I don't believe we had Szoboszlai last season, a very, very good player, brilliant off the ball, but I don't believe we had the creativity to get Nunez into those chances. I believe Florian Wirtz could be the difference between unlocking Nunez's, I'm going to say potential, but you know what I mean. Because he is the type of player that he's going to put those balls through on a plate for Darwin Nunez. He's going to be the one that's splitting those defences and splitting the passes and playing Nunez through and letting him run into acres one-on-one with a goalkeeper. So I actually think there is a potential that Darwin Nunez performs probably as his breakout season next year. If he was to stay, I think there's more creativity as a squad this year than there was last year. And I think that's part of the reason why it didn't work for Nunez last year. Now, going back into the previous years, I actually thought Darwin Nunez has always made an impact, and he's always caused chaos. That for me is why I would have him as a backup striker. If you go through and look at the backup strikers for the other top clubs, Man City, I don't even know who they have as a striker. Oh, they brought Mamouche in last season. Not really made much of an impact. If you look at Arsenal, I mean, I don't know who their main striker is, to be honest. I would have said Havertz. It looks like they're going to bring in Gyökeres. But Havertz, Jesus, I think Nunez causes more problems than both of them players. If you look at Chelsea, they had Nicholas Jackson last season when he was out. They didn't really have any depth up front, hence going out and buying Liam Delap and João Pedro. Look at Man United, Højlund and Xerxes. Look at Tottenham, they had Solanke and Richarlison. I actually think Nunez is better than all of them players, and that's why I think Darwin Nunez is good enough to be a backup option for whoever we're to bring in this season. But obviously, Liverpool can get 50 million if they let him go. That's going to be a big talking point, and that's going to play a big factor into what Liverpool do with Darwin Nunez. But for me, I would love to keep Darwin Nunez as a backup striker. The other player we've been linked to, Mateta. I'm not sure on this one. I don't think this doesn't feel like a Liverpool signing. He's 28 years old. I would imagine Crystal Palace, they've just made it into the Conference League. They've just won the cup. They're probably having the more successful period as a football club. Oliver Glasner's worked wonders there, and Mateta's been a big part of it. So I can't see a world where Crystal Palace would let Mateta go for anything less than 50, 60 million. And when you take into account he's 28 years old, I just think you could spend money better elsewhere. I know Nkunku is like 27, I think he is. But I believe Nkunku for 25 million way outperforms a Mateta for 60 million from an aspect of every point of view, so financially and what we get on the pitch. And let's be honest, what we're going to actually need them for, if we bring in an Isak or an Ekatike, they're probably going to play 40, 45, 50 games for us next season. We're probably only going to be looking for 10, 15 games from a backup striker, and most of those are going to be probably in cup competitions, or if one of those players gets a potential injury. So definitely a lot of rumours in the media at the minute. Definitely a lot of questions that we need to be answered. Let me know what you think, because I would love to know if you are on my side and you actually think we should give Darwin Nunez one more year, or if you believe we should be looking at bringing someone in. And look, obviously I know it's not nice to be talking about bringing in a backup striker to the new striker, because I think we all probably anticipated that Diogo Jota would make the market and will be playing that role for us in this upcoming season. Obviously that's not happening, but what I would say is the world doesn't stop. We've got to keep going, and unfortunately we do need to fill that position, and I think, for me, make a massive U-turn on Darwin Nunez. Let him play back up, give him his opportunities when he gets it, see if he can do anything this season. And if not, he's still going to have suitors for next year. Saudi might be interested next year still, and Napoli and teams in Italy. So yeah, I think we just have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know, do you think Nkunku could do a job? Do you think Mateta would be value for money? Let me know. I'll see you on the next one.